Okay, the last part of this course is going to be about the research dissemination. So what we have taken so far is the following. We have identified how to identify a research question, how to do a literature search, how to select the best study design, how to collect the data, how to enter it into the computer, how to manage it, how to analyze it, and finally, the last thing is to put it all together in a form of a publication. So, the research question has been identified, the literature search was done, study design, protocol, approval of the study, collected the data, and the data is analyzed. So everything is done, and now what? What am I supposed, or what are we supposed to do at this point in time? So, research dissemination is in different forms. It could be in the form of a report, or an abstract, a presentation at a conference or in a meeting, a poster in a conference presentation, as we said, a manuscript, which is a publication in a journal, or any other form of dissemination. Now, the first thing to be done when I want to prepare a manuscript or a paper is to prepare the tables and the figures. The first thing that you have to do is prepare the tables and the figures. This organizes your findings. In other words, it will put together everything that you have found and you would like to present to people. When you do the tables and the figures, it will highlight if anything is missing. Sometimes when you put them in the form of tables and figures, you will be able to identify if there is anything that is not done, so that you can go back to the analysis and do it. And it compares more easily with other papers. When you want to compare your results with other papers, you will be able to compare it easily. Usually the first table is the study population, the second table is the characteristics of the population, and the third table is the major comparisons or the outcomes or the objective of the study. Reflection. After you do the tables and the figures, you have to go and do the literature review again. Because by the time when you did the first literature review and the time when you are writing the paper, it might be 1 or 2 years even. This is why you have to go back to the literature and make sure what new studies have been published and you incorporate them into the paper or the manuscript that you are writing. What have you found that is new? So you have to start reflecting on what you found. Did I find anything new in my study? Is there anything different from what has been reported in the literature and so on? How does your study compare to others? So the comparison with other studies, is it similar? Is it different? Contradicting? Why is it different? Why is it similar? And so on. How could it change practice? Will it be useful outside of KSA, globally, and how? So you have to identify whether your study can make a difference only in the kingdom, or in the region, or in the world, and how would it make that difference? So this reflection part is very important for you before you start writing the manuscript. Based on the reflection, you might decide that you want to do further analysis. So you have to go back and you might have missed any of the descriptive measures, clinical characteristics described by others, an important secondary outcome, or other analysis that might be more appropriate. So based on the reflection and your new literature review and your review of the papers, you might need to modify your analysis. Now, once you have finalized your analysis, the writing plan starts. A lot of local studies stop here. I've seen a lot of studies that have been carried out, and once they reach this part, they stop. And it is a waste of resources if you do that. So it is the easiest or the hardest. Some people find it the easiest part, but some people find it the hardest, and this is why they stop here. So whether it's the easiest or the hardest, it has to be done, because otherwise you would not have closed the research project. So to write or to have a plan for writing, you have to have an organization of your thoughts. A person has to have an organized thoughts on that. Write a detailed outline as if it was slides for a talk. So whenever you are preparing a presentation, you have to have a clear definition of steps. What are the steps that you want to talk about? Even better, give a talk about the findings to your colleagues. So prepare a presentation and give it to other people. Let them hear or see what you have found. See what they ask about, what is unclear and what is most interesting, and get their feedback. Once you get their feedback, and once you have the presentation ready, once you have the layout, you can start writing. But before doing that, you have to know for whom are you writing. Pick your target journal, aim high. Now, if you have a paper that is ready for publication, you have to submit it to a certain journal. Of course, you have to aim high. In other words, you don't go to a very small or unindexed journal. You have to go high, but at the same time, you do not aim at New England Journal of Medicine if your paper is not at that level. Be realistic unless you do not mind rejection. So you can submit a paper to the Lancet or to the New England Journal of Medicine or to JAMA, but most likely if it is a local paper or study that you have done, it will be rejected. But be realistic, aim where you think you should belong. Now, what is the impact factor? Impact factor is a number that is given to the journals. On what basis? On the basis of how many people read the journal, on the basis of how many people refer to the journal, and so on and so forth. The higher the impact, the more important the journal is. For instance, the New England Journal of Medicine, it is 51, which is very high. Lancet is 25, JAMA is 23, and so on and so forth, till you have some journals which are 1.4, and even you have journals which are 0.05 or 0.01. So you have to pick up the journal that addresses your topic and at the same time is not very high and not very low. So for whom you have to pick up your journal, go to journal website. Each journal now has a website on the internet, and get the instructions. Each journal has a set of instructions to the authors. So you as an author, you have to get these instructions and you have to stick with the length. They tell you how long do they expect the paper to be. So you have to stick with the length as well as the format. Guidelines are often very specific. Read 1 or 2 papers from the same journal to make sure that your preparation of the paper is going to be consistent with the journal requirements. The sections of a manuscript, as we have done it at the beginning of the course, we said there's the abstract, the introduction, the objectives, the methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and references. So usually I would start with the methods. Why? Because you already wrote it from your protocol. When you wrote the proposal at the time when you submitted for approval of the grant or of the application, you should have wrote the proposal, the methods section. So the sections in the methods are the study design, the population, whether inclusion or exclusion, data gathering, instruments and procedures, the analysis, the ethics, conflict of interest, and contributions. All of these should be ready from your proposal. All what you have to do is to put it in a form of a manuscript now, not in a form of a proposal. Be detailed, the reviewers need this. The same comment. When you submitted it for the research committee, you had to be detailed so that the reviewers will be able to judge. Now you have a different judge or different people who are going to judge you. This time you are going to be judged by the reviewers from the journal. The results section, usually it should not be very long. It should be short, 300 to 500. It should be divided into paragraphs, could be separate sections. The first thing is study population. What are the participation and the characteristics of the participants? Comparison of the main study groups is the second group or the second section, which is the characteristics of the people, but in comparison. The main study results, simple and multivariate analysis, could be in a third table. And the fourth table could be secondary analyses or secondary objectives. Because you remember we said any research question could have a primary objective, but multiple secondary objectives. So the fourth table might be, or the fourth paragraph might be secondary analyses. Mention each table and figure that you have included into your manuscript, refer to each one in order. So you start with table 1, go to table 2, table 3, and then table 4. Summarize key message. Do not talk about a lot of findings that you find in the results. Make it specific to the key message. Limit one key result per table or figure, one key point. And do not repeat numbers that are in the tables already. The introduction, you also have written the introduction when you wrote the proposal. Keep this short, aim for 250 to 300 words, elements of the paragraphs, elements or paragraphs, importance of the condition, locally or globally, importance of the clinical aspect, identifications of gap in knowledge, and objectives of the study. It should flow well. The same criteria that we talked about when we talked about the proposal apply in the introduction when you are writing a manuscript. The discussion is very important in a manuscript, and this is the first time you do it because the discussion is based on the results you found. So it should be less than 1,000 words. Be modest. In other words, don't say, this is the first study, I'm the only one who did this, and so on and so forth. Be modest. Do not overdo do that. You have to have separate sections, but start with brief paragraph summarizing the key message. The key message from your study. What did you do? What did you found? What did you find? This is the first paragraph in the discussion. The second set of paragraphs should be comparison with other studies. How does your study compare to other studies in the literature? Why was it different? Why was it similar? What are the reasons that made it different? And so on. Another part is the limitations of the study. Acknowledge. Say that one of the limitations of our study was this, and that. But explain how you managed or why you think they are not so important. So you mention the limitations and you mention the effect of them. The strengths, list most important, especially if better than others. Do not exaggerate. Don't put 20 strengths of the study. Limit it to 3 or 2 major strengths of your study. Implications, what do your findings mean? How should it change practice? So what does your study on your results reflect, and how would it change the practice in the medical field? Finally, you have the conclusion. The conclusion should be 100 to 150 words. Write out your major conclusions or major findings. How would it change practice? Is more research required? If so, what? So basically the conclusion is one paragraph in very few words that summarize everything. What is the main thing that you found? What is the main message that is behind your study? And whether there is any future research that's needed or not, so that you can direct future researchers into other research. The last thing I would do is the abstract. The abstract could be written last when you know what the key message is. Once you finalize everything, you put the summary of the whole paper. Read the journal's requirements, structured versus unstructured. Structured means that you have to have a title for the objective, a title for the methods, a title for the results, and so on. And unstructured, where you have everything in one paragraph, one big paragraph. If structured, how do they want you to structure it? And word length, do not exceed. Most of journals have a word length of 200, 250 words per abstract. If they ask for 250, don't put 300 because they will reject your paper. Finally, you have to polish. What does it mean? You have to reread it, revise it, and rewrite it. So whenever you finish the paper, go back and read it again, and modify and change. Sometimes people change it 10 times because while you are writing, you might do a lot of mistakes. Things might not make sense. So you have to go back and modify and change. Add all information required by the journal. Read again all instructions. Meet their limits, word count. Do not exceed word counts. Check the references, accuracy. You have to be accurate with the references. And I have said that before, better not to cite than to cite incorrectly. Ask your colleagues to read and an expert in the field to read it again. Fix everything they know. This is very important. When you finish writing the paper, don't submit it straight to the journal. Send it to one of your colleagues as we did with the proposal. Send it to one of your colleagues. They might spend an hour or two reading it for you. They might have a lot of comments. What's even better, give it to somebody who is an expert in this field. If you are doing a cardiology thing, give it to a cardiologist. If you are doing something in oncology, give it to an oncologist. Let them read it to see what comments they have. And whatever comments they give you, take them into consideration and fix them. Because most probably if you do not fix them, the reviewers from the journal will give you the same comments. Submission. Now you have finished your paper and you are ready to submit. Now, mostly online. Before we used to do it in post, and we send it, it took maybe 10 days or 15 days or 1 month to reach the journal and so on. Now on the spot you can go online, you can submit it online. It may require a cover letter. Most of the journals require a cover letter for submission. In other words, a letter from the principal investigator or the primary author of the paper saying that this is the study, we did not publish it elsewhere, and please consider it for publication. So it's an introduction for the submission. Usually pretty easy and quick. First time is time consuming. Don't be afraid from the first time you submit a paper for publication. It might take time, but once you get used to the process, it will be easier and faster. After you submit, you might wait for 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 months. Sometimes you might wait for 1 year till the journal comes back to you and gives you their feedback. You would receive basically an email saying something like this: Dear doctor, whatever your name is, I regret to. I regret means I'm sad to tell you that this did not work out. So, in other words, it is a rejection. In other words, they are telling you, sorry, we're not going to accept your paper. Do not protest. Do not say, no, you are wrong, you did not do a good review, and so on and so forth. Even if the reviewers were not right, you might know that your paper is better than what they said, but you cannot do anything about it. Correct the response, read the reviewers carefully, fix everything you can, and resubmit to a different journal. When you resubmit to a different journal, don't go higher in impact, go a little bit lower. So the good news would be, dear doctor, whatever the name is, I am pleased to. Whenever you see I'm pleased to, it means it's going to be accepted. I'm pleased to inform you that your paper blah, 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 but it is usually conditional. What does it mean conditional? It means that it's not accepted as it is. They tell you if you do this, 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 and that, we will accept it for you. And most of the times, the conditions are manageable, are doable. You can manage. So fix everything, or read the reviews carefully, fix everything you can, and explain what you cannot in a very polite response letter. If there's something you cannot do anything about, say it in a nice way. We're sorry to inform you, we cannot do this because this, this, and that. Resubmit, following the many instructions. Sometimes you might have a long list of things you have to do. Do every single one by itself. Might be repeated for more than 5 to 6 times. Most of the times, once you resubmit, they will accept it. But sometimes they will send you another list telling you you have to do this and that. You have to fix it, send it back. They will send you again. So it might go back and forth few times. Finally, the key to good research is teamwork. Nobody can do research by themselves. Research is done in teams, in groups. You have to put your hands together to be able to do research properly. And questions?